everyone, this is Tracy and I'm happy to be here. Today we're going to make a chicken tortilla soup with a tomato base. I love the tomato base because it makes it nice and hearty. Some recipes call for dairy. We are not going to add dairy to this. We're just going to keep it straightforward with our chicken broth and our tomato base as the base, right? And for our spices, we're going to have some beautiful, rich spices: paprika, chili arbol, cayenne, garlic, onion, bay leaf, salt, and pepper. It's going to be great and absolutely delicious. And of course, who can't have chicken tortilla soup without corn, black beans, and chicken? Of course, right? I'm going to add a little bit more tomato in this just to chunk it up because I love how our corn and our black beans give it nice chunkiness. And make sure your chicken is shredded for this. It's fine to use canned. Just make sure that you definitely rinse and drain and rinse the canned goods so that you don't have all those processed, those added processed pieces. If you are using raw, make sure you cook those two first thoroughly before adding them to the soup. It will reduce time. We're here on efficiency. And also, I love a good, we have efficiency and of course our budget, right? So I just try to think of some things that we have in our kitchen all the time that we can create fun things. All right, let's get started. I'm gonna change my camera view so you can see, of course, my workstation. Here we go. I'm just gonna pull it down. Boom, there we are. Hopefully that camera doesn't fall because we're wild today. You get my waistband. Yay, go you. Hopefully you don't see my feet. So here we are. I am going to start with changing my camera again. I'm going to show you how we're going to bloom actually. So I'm going to change it to this camera setting, and hopefully it doesn't try to go in and out a whole bunch of times. So we want to turn on our oven, our stove top to, I like to do a medium high. So let's do that. I'm going to get some of these ingredients out of the way. The first ones that we're going to work with will be blooming our cumin, paprika, chili arbol. We have 1/8 of a teaspoon, 2 teaspoons of cumin. We have 1 teaspoon of paprika, a half a teaspoon, well, actually a teaspoon of the chili arbol. So we're going to use that, right? So I'm going to move the rest of these ingredients out of my way to the table behind me. I'm going to do my best showing you on this view. I typically do culinary classes, which is my daughter using my other camera. So we're working with what we have, right? Which we all do for the most part. All right, so this is my nice little pot here, and we are going to bloom here in just a moment. Now, I have my garlic pretty much set up for me. I'm actually going to use this knife right here is our Japanese cutting knife. It has these nice little ovals. And what I'm going to do with this is I am going to take 2 knives just because I'm going to do it. I'm going to press and get that mince, that juicy stuff out called Allison. Allison is the one that protects the garlic. It is what gives it the flavor of your food, but it's also the terminator that rips off the heads of viruses in your body, like the cold virus, to starve it to death. This is called a rock chalk, so that we can heal from certain viruses, such as the cold virus. What I just took out there was like the end piece of a garlic. So I did that. You can move over to this one so it doesn't go up the knife. See how the difference, how it goes all the way up the knife here, and here it stops at those ovals. That's why it's good to use this knife versus this knife when cutting. See how easy it just comes right off of that knife. Now, what I do is I have on hand some vinegar and water solution. It's 1 part vinegar, 1 part water. So 1 cup water, 1 cup vinegar. And it just helps me clean my knives as I go without getting any like the chemicals into our food or having to go to the kitchen sink a bunch of times. Just kind of in the way. Now, if you happen to hear my daughter's filming upstairs, we have a small place. So you might hear her. You know what? She's streaming, I'm videoing, and we're doing our thing, right? So okay, so I have the mince. Now the onion, I'm getting real with you here. So I'm just going to make sure this is diced. Now I'm using a white onion. And I'm just dicing and getting a little smaller because don't want that as one of my lead flavors, or when I say lead flavor, I don't want it as like dominant as a chunk. So I want to make sure that I cut this up a little bit, a little more. So it's called a dicing it. The difference between dicing and chopping is a little bit larger. We chop typically like a carrot. You can chop it in slices. Dicing is the shape or square, more in this sense. So this is, again, called a rock chop. Now, you might see my bare feet because I'm literally in my kitchen in my bare feet. What I do with kids, people with arthritis in my classes, what I do is I use a cutting board. People who are a little nervous using knives, I just use a smaller cutting board, and I put it up against the food, and that's just the backdrop, so it makes it easier to chop. Okay, and just make sure that you're not too far back on the knife here. Make sure that you're up on the knife so that you have good control of the knife. And it does help if you do have like arthritis or small hands. It makes it a little easier to cut. Okay, my skillet is hot. I don't add the oil to my skillet until it is hot. So we're going to change the camera again. Just bear with me. I got the camera way over here, but hey, let's work with it, right? I'm going to do a tablespoon of this. Okay, she started yelling up there. She's getting excited. I think she's playing a video game. So I just stop and tell her to kind of like, don't yell. She sometimes gets really excited, and the words can get very colorful sometimes, right? We get excited. All right, so we have with this, what I'm gonna do here, I'm gonna bloom these by stacking them right in the center. I'm just gonna pull the flavor out. I'm just gonna pull them here, okay? I'm using not an olive oil. I think there's something on the eye. Not using an olive oil, I'm using avocado oil. It's a high smoke point oil. I just like to use avocado. I love the flavor anyways. Smoke points are really important to know. In the description box below, when I talk about this, we talk about smoke points a lot in my classes, and I want you to understand that you need to know what oil to use so that it's safe, because when you are using the wrong oil, what happens is that a smoke point happens. And what that means is the triglycerides separate, causing oxidization of the fat. Triglycerides separate and become unstable, and changes the flavor of your food. So be very aware of that. Okay. Now you can use, like I use my hand because it's called porcelain fingertips. So that means I have the feeling in my fingertips are not really there. I've I've actually cooked before and reached into the stove and freak some people out sometime, you know. All right, so this is my little smokestack. So under here, I'm doing like a little toasting of our spices and with my garlic on top. Once I get it a little brown on the edges there, then I'm just gonna push it down, really get that in and pull it in together. Push it out. All right. Pull it in. Nice and toasty, and that's what we want right there. The next thing I'm going to add is going to be an onion. You can substitute the onion, and you can do a red onion, just not like a leek or a green onion, because that is not the same. All right. Just gonna clean my cutting boards here. There we are. I'm just gonna pull this in. I'm gonna caramelize and get the beautiful flavors pulled through and get those onions nice and shiny. While this is happening, I'm going to quarter. You can either quarter or slice, doesn't matter. But if you want it chunky, you're going to quarter your cherry tomatoes. And if you don't want it as chunky and you want it smaller, you can slice it. I'm just going to get a little bit more of that chunk in. They will bloom, meaning they'll basically break down into where the flesh and the skin will separate and get wrinkly. And what that means is like the vitamin C is cooking out, it's wrinkly, like when you get a sunburn, your skin, what it does is like that vitamin C, right? It's like your skin is damaged due to the sun, zaps the vitamin C. So what we're doing is we're balancing the dish. So our peppers here, our spices, contain a high amount of vitamin C as well, naturally. What we're going to do with the tomatoes is we're going to add minerals to our dish. So since we have a lot going on with the tomatoes, I'm going to show, we don't want to, I will tell you this, you don't want to cut and add, you want to cut them. And I'm going to show you here really quickly. I'm going to move it over. Let me show you what I'm doing in the cutting realm here. I hook my fingers, I slide the knife through, and see how small they are. So it's not going to be chunky like if you're using a Roma tomato. They are going to cook down. And notice I'm not even worried with my my skillet, my pot. I'm just letting it cook. And I'm using, this is going to be about 1.5 cups of tomato. Those spices are starting to really come forward, which is great because that's what I want. So when we want spices to come forward, we bloom them in the beginning. And I tell people, if you want to make it spicier dish, then this is when you want to get that spice out. Once you start smelling that spice blooming, and you don't want it too spicy, like heat measurement of the spice, then this is when you would go ahead and make sure you add the tomatoes, bloom them, and notice how I sliced that one because it was a smaller one. I want to get the same measurement through. Just be careful of your fingers. Then we're just going to slide it in. And then stir these together. Notice the stacking process when I went to go stack them. When I stayed stacked the whole time and never moved it, never touched it, because I was cutting the tomatoes. And that is a way that we can basically have control of your what's cooking. And if you have to step away to prep something like cook or cut, let the dog out, answer the phone, whatever the case, then that way you have this this happening where it's controlled environment. Now, my pot right now, it's a medium heat. This is a portable, so it'll be at a higher. So if you see my numbers, they're probably higher than what yours is. Just test. We don't want it sizzling. We want it basically humming with the vibration of the spices pulling out. Okay. This is more of a slow cook. Okay. We don't want to speed. We don't need to rush this process right here. What's going to happen in just a minute, once we create this beautiful base, this is the most important part. It's like the roux of gumbo. We want to make sure that our base is solid, so to speak. It has those blooming of the flavors. It has the tomatoes breaking down. It has everything coming together. And the thing being is that we're opening up these tomatoes to receive the spices that are in here in our pot. Okay. So we want to cook that. This is going to cook for a few minutes. While that's doing and cooking, we're going to kind of shred the chicken a little bit more. So I'm going to leave that like that because I need this to cook a little bit more rapidly than staring at it. And instead, I'm going to come over here, get my chicken, and just going to cut it up more. What I do to prevent a dry chicken when cooking is I will marinate or even boil it in coconut milk. So I will add a cup of coconut milk to the water. Just, a light coconut milk is fine. It doesn't need to be a full fat coconut milk. It's a little heavy. So I'll do a light coconut milk just to give it a little fat because chicken doesn't contain fat. And for the most part, people are not allergic to coconuts who are, lactose intolerant. It just gives it a beautiful fat. So I'm just cutting this up more. So when I go, and you can put it in a food processor, which is fine. I'm just doing it, getting it done here. You can also at this point cook rice if you are going to pour your soup over some rice. I would not add the rice to this. That way, if you don't feel like rice that day, then you don't have rice. You're like, oh, chicken tortilla soup with rice, Because if you wanted noodles, you could do noodles, whatever. All right, so we have a nice little, I'm hearing the soup sizzle, that's what I want. So we want that sizzle happening. And don't freak out. All you have to do on this is just stir it. Stirring pushes heat around. And I'm gonna pull up, oh gosh, that smells so good. Those tomatoes are not quite done. And I am using heirloom cherry tomatoes. So with that said, those are not gonna be little dainty like the regular like grape tomatoes. They're more hearty. So they do take a little longer to cook. I'm just cleaning up my space as I go, which is super important. Now we have that done. We want to pull over our chicken broth, our corn, our black beans. Look at that. That's nice. Look at that. Now it's starting to break down. So what is going to happen here? This is going to break down and the flesh color is changing because the vitamin C is reducing, which gives it that beautiful color. Okay. We have our spices. We have a teaspoon of garlic, a teaspoon of onion powder, 2 ounces of tomato broth, and 2 cups of our shredded chicken, salt and pepper. So get those next ingredients out. And what I want to do is kind of do something a little different. I'm going to, oh, and this is not burning, by the way, just the camera makes it look that way. This is just this is the good stuff. So we can just push it out. That right there. The flavor flakes is what I call them. All right, now, see that? Now it's ready. It's broken down nicely. We are going, yay. Beautiful taste. Put black beans in first, stir those in. Let that absorb. Oh, that's good. Next, corn, stir those in. And what I want to do before we add, I want it, since this is going to open up, what I want to do here is add our chicken. The last thing I'm going to do is add the chicken broth. So I want to pull these spices into open up the vegetables, the vegetables and the chicken. I'm going to open it up nicely. I'm going to open this up. What I mean by that is I'm going to stir it in and blend it into the meat. Get that meat. Oh, yay. Perfect. Get it into the corn. Get it into the black beans. Oh, that's beautiful. Now, next thing I'm going to do is add my bay leaf, the onion powder, and the garlic powder, and I'm going to stir that in. Nice. Wonderful. Pepper in my hand, brown pepper, and then salt. The pink Himalayan sea salt in my hand. And I do 2 of those, which comes out to be a little bit more than an 1/8 of a teaspoon. And the pink Himalayan sea salt contains minerals. It does contain less sodium chloride than your kosher sea salt, which is about 1,000 milligrams different. That's why I recommend using, especially with high blood pressure, using the pink Himalayan sea salts. Keep hitting my camera, sorry. Okay. Now, oh yay, so good. I'm gonna pour this in with my tomato. You're like, when is that going in? The tomato paste. Stir that in to give it a nice rosy color. I stirred it in with a fork to break it up. Oh, beautiful, beautiful. And you can always add more. So if you want it a little bit more darker, you can add more to it. Now, we're just gonna, all you have to do now is let that cook. And while that is cooking, what you'll do, you can make your own, look at that, it's so beautiful. What you can is you can make your own tortilla strips. Just gonna take a knife right here, long strips. I would go across to go with the little striations that you see. That's just me. And then I go one cut down, okay? Like that. What we're gonna do with this, you can either spray them with a Pam, um, or brush them with a mister oil. That's what it's called. It's a mister. And you can put your own type of oil. I put an avocado in my avocado oil in the mister. Spray it with that. It's a little healthier than the Pam. And put it on a baking sheet and let it turn into chips. And this will be your topping for that. Then another topping would be, of course, avocado, which is great to have when like on the side or on and garnish it on top. And when you do it, you want to put the avocado on top, I would think, on top of the tortilla chips. So here we are. I'm going to pull this forward. This is our soup. Absolutely delicious. Takes no time to do. You're going to bake at 350 degrees your tortilla chips for about 2 to 5 minutes, depending on. And what you want to do is that you want to actually flip them if you're baking them. If you fry them, of course, you just throw them in oil at 370 degrees until they're crispy. So I'm going to bake these for 2 to 5 minutes. At 2 minutes, I'm flipping them and baking them another 2 minutes on the other side. And if they're not done, then I flip them and cook them another minute, and it should be done within that 5-minute range. There you go. Enjoy.